William Walker Atkinson's Mind Power. Chapter 11 was Dynamic Individuality. This is Chapter 12, Mental Atmosphere. Our dynamic individual places himself in a receptive attitude only toward the great universal will, and in a positive attitude toward all else. In this way, he really becomes a most active center of power, which becomes manifest to all with whom he comes in contact. He may not realize just what he's doing, and may know nothing of the truth herein stated, but still, he feels that he is in touch with something that aids and assists him, and which gives him strength and dynamic force. He may talk about his luck, or his lucky star, or he may secretly believe himself specially favored by Providence. This is a secret belief of the majority of successful men, in fact. But the fact remains that every positive and successful man feels, underneath it all, that he has something back of him. And this belief takes form in action and causes him to manifest that air of calm, positive power and self-confidence noticeable in such men in every instance. You will readily see, from what has been said, that the personal atmospheres of persons depend upon the character of their mental states and are the result of the mental currents emanating from them. Every person has his or her own mentative aura, or body of radiant mentative energy, which flows from them in all directions. These mentative atmospheres affect the people with whom one comes in contact. You know people who seem to carry with them an atmosphere of feeling, which affects a room full of people or even a building. This atmosphere may be positive or negative in its effect, that is, stimulating or depressing. All of these things arise in the way which I have mentioned. It is related of Rachel, the great French actress, that although she was not beautiful in form or face, still she had that indescribable charm of personality about her that caused everyone to consider her a beautiful woman. So great was her fascinating charm. That which so many call personal magnetism, as distinguished from personal force, consists of this mentative atmosphere, or radiant mentative energy, which induces in all within its field a feeling of similar emotion or vibration. The charm of the fascinating person is accounted for in the same way. It is all a matter of the mentative currents inducing feeling in others. The power called fascination, which has been known in all times and countries, arises from the same cause. It operates by the strong mentative currents pouring from one's mind and inducing mental states in others. The mentative force emanating from each individual creates a mental atmosphere around him, which often extends a considerable distance from his body, especially in the case of strong individuals, whose mental atmosphere is felt when they enter a room or public place. Persons whose personality is weaker have a mental atmosphere extending only a few inches from their bodies, and which is scarcely perceptible to those coming in contact with them. The man who feels himself to be a dynamic individual carries with him an aura of mental atmosphere of positive strength, which is plainly felt by those coming in contact with him. People say about such a man that he has something about him which impresses them, but which they fail to understand. It will be worth your while to study this mental atmosphere of some strong man with whom you'll come in contact. For now that you have the secret of the matter, you may take some valuable lessons from him. I cannot very well describe this air to you, for unless you have met a man of this kind, you will not understand it. But it is a something different from the pompous, self-sufficient, self-important, fussy air and demeanor manifested by the cheap imitators of these great men. The dynamic individual does not tell you how great or smart or important he is. He leaves that for his cheap imitators. He makes you feel his strength by his very manner and atmosphere, without saying a word. He has that something about him that people notice and wonder at. And that something comes from his conscious or unconscious relation to the universal will. The little fellow who thinks he is one of the big ones believes that his strength comes from his personality. And sooner or later he stumbles because of this error. But the real big ones of life know better. They may not understand it all, but some way they feel that there is a something back of them from which they are able to draw strength and power. And believing this, they are filled with courage and daring and radiate their power on all sides. They may talk of their lucky star or special providence, or else believe themselves to be specially favored by God, as is the case with at least one of the big men of modern finance. But no matter what may be their special interpretations of this something, they all recognize its existence and trust to it. And this conviction and realization gives to the strong individuals that air of calm, positive power, and self-confidence that impresses those with whom they come in contact and which forms their mental atmosphere. And in giving you instructions in the art of building for yourselves a positive mental atmosphere, I can do no better than to refer you back to the first principles and again bid you to realize that you are a dynamic focus, a center of power in the great universal will, having the dual attribute of will power and desire force. In short, you are a living dynamo. If you will but get this realization fixed firmly in your mind, you will automatically create for yourself a most positive mental atmosphere that will be felt by all with whom you come in contact. So first, last, and all the time, build up this realization. Say to yourself, I am dynamic. And then think it out. Dream it out. Act it out. And of course, always realize what all this means. You are the channel through which is pouring the universal will power. And in the degree that you allow the current to so flow through you, so will be the power you were able to manifest. When you wish to manifest a special degree of power, just let this statement, I am dynamic, flame out in vivid letters in your mind. When you feel that you are being approached by some other person of strong will, whom you do not wish to influence you, just bring this statement into effect, and you will actually see the effect of it upon the other person. He will feel your strong mental atmosphere and will cease trying to affect you. Even when there is no special need for making the statement of power, it will be well for you to keep it burning bright within you, for by so doing you strengthen your realization, and your mental atmosphere reflects the inner mental state. Well, so much for the general mental atmosphere. As we proceed, we shall see that the dynamic individual creates a special mental atmosphere around him by his mental states, depending upon his will or desire at the time. Special mental atmosphere. Not only does his will and desire affect other persons directly by means of mental currents, but mentative induction is also set up by the mental atmosphere, without any special effort on his part. In this place, I wish to call your attention to the importance of always maintaining your positivity as a means of mental training. Do not allow yourself to become negative to others, even where there is nothing lost by so doing. For by this neglect, you create a negative habit, which will cause you trouble to overcome later. If a person comes into your presence, and his personality seems likely to dominate or overpower yours, by all means interpose a mental resistance right then and there. It is not necessary for you to manifest the same in words, for that would make you ridiculous in many cases. Nor is it necessary for you to give any special physical expression to your mental state. Simply look the person in the eye, carelessly and without any special effort, at the same time making the mental statement, I am dynamic. And you will find that your positivity will rise until it is equal with his, and your feeling of negativity will disappear. In exceptional cases, you may add mentally, I am more dynamic than you. It will be well for you to practice the creation of special mental atmospheres in order to establish the habit, and to thus render it easier to avail yourself of the same on special occasions. Opportunities of all kinds will present themselves to you in everyday life. The gist of the matter is to surround yourself with a mental aura of such a nature that people will act toward you as you wish them to do. A few examples may help you to get a clearer idea of what I mean. So I herewith give you the same. I know a lady living in Chicago who was constantly complaining that people were always running all over her on State Street, the crowded retail street of the great western metropolis, Chicago. She said that they were always crowding her off the sidewalk and pushing, bumping, and jostling her in a most annoying manner. She asked me for instructions as to what she thought, as to what thought she should use to prevent individuals from so acting. Okay? I answered that I did not think it was necessary to consider the separate individuals in the case, but that she should treat the crowd as a whole by means of her protective mental atmosphere. I then advised her to build up a mental atmosphere around this statement. People respect my rights. They will not unduly impose on me in the street. I deny the power of the crowd to impose on me. And she followed this advice, and in a short time had built up a protective mental atmosphere, which acted almost magically upon the crowd, who stepped aside and gave her a full right of way on the pavement. She would simply go on her way calmly, serenely, and undisturbed, and the crowd let her alone. I must add that I think that the original trouble arose from a subconscious dislike of crowds and an extreme shrinking from people. The result being that this dislike acted almost as does fear, and really attracted to her the interference of people. Well, the new mental atmosphere dispelled the old one and gave her an additional positivity besides. In this connection, I would call your attention to that remarkable psychological fact that fear acts as an attracting force in a negative way. If you want a thing very much, you attract it to you. And if you fear it very much, you do likewise. This apparent contradiction has bothered many students of the subject, but it seems very plain to me. I think the explanation is that in both cases a vivid mental picture is held, and the attraction results along the line of visualization, which always tends to materialize the mental image. Another case from actual experience. Another lady, also a resident of Chicago, complained that the clerks in the great department stores would not treat her courteously, but would keep her waiting without paying her any attention, and in other ways would treat her like a human doormat. She said she would not have minded this so much if other women were treated likewise, but that while she was ignored, others would receive the greatest attention, the clerks falling over themselves to wait upon them. I told her that she had gradually built up around her a mental atmosphere of expectancy, that she had fallen into the habit of expecting such treatment, and consequently she got what she expected. I think that in the beginning she had manifested a timid, humble, meek, worm of the dust state of mind when she entered the big stores, which somewhat overawed her. And then after this drew upon her the neglect of the clerks, who seemed very ready to wipe their feet on human doormats. Well, she grew to regularly expect the shabby treatment. It wasn't a matter of dress, or anything of that kind, for she dressed well. And for that matter, I know women who dress poorly, who never get any such treatment, for they understand the underlying mental laws too well for that. It was simply a matter of a negative mental atmosphere. I told her to brace up and to create a new mental atmosphere around this general statement. The clerks like me. They like to wait on me. They give me every attention. And they do this because they like me. And also because I insist upon it as my right. The charm worked in a short time. And now the good lady reports that the clerks not only treat her well, but even take the trouble to call her attention to desirable selections, special bargains, and all the rest of it. The cure was perfect. Well, I call your attention to the above statement. Please note that the first part of it operated along the lines of desire force, and the latter part of it along the lines of willpower. The statement of the first mentioned lady, the one who objected to street crowding, was altogether along the lines of willpower. I asked the students to study and analyze each of these cases, because by so doing they will be able to understand, be able to apply the principles in cases coming under their own observation, and also in their own cases. I once directed a lady who complained that she was unpopular, that nobody loved her, and on, to apply a similar method. She created a new mental atmosphere around her along the lines of the general statement, people like me, they find me attractive, they love me, and they like to be in my company. After a time, she reported that from a state of wallflowerdom, she had become quite a favorite, and in fact was at a loss to adjust herself to the changed conditions, finding somewhat of an embarrassment of likings and lovings. This was a case of desire force, pure and simple. Now, do not imagine for a moment that in the above cases, and hundreds of others known to me personally, the desired result was obtained merely from repeating, parrot-like, or like a phonograph, the words of the statements. This talk of the power of mere words and all the rest of such talk has wearied me greatly. I have seen and heard so much of this nonsense since I have become acquainted with certain people who consider themselves in the new thought that I just like to use the words statement or affirmation. These people have imagined that by the mere repetition of words they could work miracles. Well, nonsense. Nonsense. They remind me of the Chinese and certain other people who write long prayers on slips of paper and allow them to flutter in the breeze, hoping that the gods will accept their prayers at face value while the prayer makers are amusing themselves elsewhere. Sometimes they attach little bells to the prayers in order to attract the attention of the gods. Others paste the prayers on water wheels turned by the streams, thereby claiming credit for a prayer at each turn of the wheel. Cheap praying, that is. Oh, don't laugh. Some of you are just as foolish. You have been making your statements and affirmations in the same spirit, and to now feel disappointed because nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. How could it be otherwise? I have said it over and over again, and now say it over again another time, that the words of themselves are nothing. The real virtue lies in the feeling behind the words. If there is no feeling, there is no result. In order to get to the results, you must erect the framework of the words and then build around it the structure of the feeling and expectation and visualization. That's the way to do it. The words are merely the skeleton. The flesh and blood are the feelings and materialized visualizations. The ladies mentioned above, or a moment ago, whom I have used as typical cases to illustrate the principle, did not rest content with words. I wouldn't allow them to do so. I kept after them, insisting upon their using the proper mental exercises and methods. That's what did the work. And now I shall give you the same instruction and directions that I gave them. Adapt them to your own cases, and you will be likewise successful. The kernel of the process of creating the mental atmosphere lies in what is called visualization. Visualization is simply the creation of a strong mental image of the thing desired. The perfecting it each day until it becomes almost as clear as an existing material thing. Then the visualization tends to materialize itself. That is, it begins to build around itself actual material conditions corresponding with the mental framework. The statement of words is the pattern around which the visualized mental images form themselves. The lady above mentioned made her mental image of the street conduct of the crowd, and the people unconsciously felt it and built themselves around it. So in the case of the lady in the department store and the others mentioned, the mental image manifested itself as a mental atmosphere and gradually materialized. The thing to do in visualizing is to bring the positive imagination to see and feel the thing is actually existent. Then by constant practice and meditation, the mental atmosphere becomes formed. And the result is all a matter of time. See yourself as you wish to be. See others as you wish them to be. See conditions as you wish them to be. Think them out. Dream them out. Act them out. And materialization will follow upon visualization, even as visualization followed upon the statement. In this connection, however, I must call your attention to the fact that the degrees of receptivity of other people to your mental atmospheres and mental pictures depend entirely upon their degree of positivity. They respond only in the degree that they responded to other mentative influences. The strong avoid influences to which the weak yield. In this, as in every other phase of phenomena. But do not let that cause fear on your part. You may make yourself positive. You have had the instructions given you, and it is now your own work to do the rest. I might write a whole book on this subject of visualization in the phase of forming mental atmospheres. But I have herein given you the underlying principles, and have also given you a few illustrative examples. You must do the rest yourselves. If you have carefully read this book, and have studied between the lines, as well as the lines themselves, you will have grasped the little details of the matter which will not be apparent to those who haven't done so. Each will find in this book that for which he or she is ready, and not a bit more. I think the careful students among you will readily understand just what I mean by this. If you don't understand, then I cannot help you out, and you must wait until you unfold in understanding. But I would say that a rereading, or in our case here, a re-listening of this work is advisable. Several times, in fact. Each time that you reread it, you will find something new that you had previously overlooked. And each reading will discover many hidden meanings, now suddenly made plain. The man who wishes to be successful in his dealings with his fellow men must surround himself with a positive mental atmosphere. Must. He must create an atmosphere of self-reliance and positivity that will overcome the negativity of those with whom he comes in contact. The positive mental atmosphere is that subtle influence that emanates from the strong men of affairs, and which affects, influences, and controls people to a greater degree than the flow of words which may affect, believing it to be the key of success. When you come in contact with one having a mental atmosphere of this kind, you are affected by it, consciously and unconsciously. And if it has this effect on you, in the case of other persons, why should you not reach out and possess this power yourself? Why should you not be a positive instead of a negative one? The directions and exercises given in this chapter, coupled with the instruction given in other chapters of the book, should enable you to develop around yourself a most positive mental atmosphere that will make you a great power. But it all depends upon yourself. You must exercise your will and desire, just as you would do were they muscles that you wished to develop. The rule operates in the mental as well as in the physical world. In addition to the exercises given in preceding chapters, I would suggest that the following may prove useful to some of you, in special cases, in forming the positive mental atmosphere. I shall merely give you the verbal framework, and you must build around it the mental picture, which in turn produces the mental atmosphere. But remember, even in practicing these exercises, never lose sight of the main statement of power: I am dynamic. For that statement will impart life, vitality, and energy to the other mental images and statements. Here are the statements referred to. The verbal framework around which you are to build your mental picture that you wish to materialize on the objective plane. You will find these useful in many cases. Mental framework. 1. I surround myself with an atmosphere of success. 2. I am positive. I have a strong will. I make a positive impression on those coming into my mental atmosphere. 3. I'm fearless. Absolutely fearless. Nothing can harm me. 4. I kill out all worry and discouragement. I radiate hope, cheerfulness, good nature. I am bright, cheerful, happy. I make all around me feel the same way. 5. I am well poised, calm, and self-controlled. 6. I have a perfect mastery over my temper, emotions, and passions. And all recognize this to be a fact. 7. Excuse me. I am at ease here. And all bashfulness and timidity has departed. I am calm, at ease. I feel at home. Excuse me again. 8. People like me. I am surrounded with a mental atmosphere that causes people to like me. 9. I'm master of my surroundings. Nothing disturbs me. Nothing affects me adversely. I am master. 10. I am surrounded with a mental atmosphere of protection. No one's adverse thoughts, currents, or suggestions can penetrate this protective armor. I'm safe from mental attacks. I am safe, I'm strong, and positive. In using any of these statements, be sure to follow my advice and my instructions regarding the mental images and so on, which put flesh on these verbal skeletons and make a living force out of the dry bones of words. Remember the importance of mental imaging and visualization in this matter of creating mental atmospheres. Chapter 13 will be channels of influence.